Thank you. I am so honored to be with you, and a little bit daunted. So this is your day of accomplishment and life passage, and it will not have escaped you that the world out there is going through its own rather messy life passage. You are being sent out from this place of learning and contemplation to a world of great tenderness and tumult. And what made the news yesterday, or what was in the headlines yesterday and today, and what trended 20 minutes ago, tells a story of disarray and despair and destruction, of suffering and mindlessness heaped upon each other. This is part of the story of our time, but it is not the whole story of our time. There is also the generative, enlightened possibility of our time of compassion and healing and all the waking up we are doing to all kinds of things that need to change and all kinds of possibility collectively. This is unfolding life by life, community by community, breath by breath, day by day. I know that every one of you is leaning into this, that you are part of the fullness of the story of our time. And Chuck, I have to say, this sounds a little bit like those other commencement speeches, but I hope you're gonna like my analysis. Because as I thought about coming to be with you today in this singular, extraordinary place of in American life and education, I felt called to share with you first my clarity that what you have been learning here these past years has precisely equipped you to meet the world in its pain and its promise while continuing to walk with your own pain and promise. And of course, that is one of the things you know. That inner life and outer presence in the world are intertwined, whether we want them to be or not, that they are companions towards wholeness. And after your years here, that may sound like such an obvious, basic fact of life, but it is not obvious to everyone. I am really fascinated, the longer I live, by how we strange human creatures continually unlearn the most elemental things, and we have to relearn them time and time again until one day perhaps we learn them as if for the first time with consciousness. So we shouldn't need Brené Brown's social scientific research and a great TED Talk to remind us that we are vulnerable. Right? But there's been this great awakening to this fact that we are vulnerable. I mean, another of our great cutting-edge inventions that I'm so fascinated by is farm to table. And while no one in this room probably loves Westworld more than me, I also have a critical distance on the fact that we're so titillated by the prospect of our technologies, not just being intelligent, but becoming sentient and becoming conscious. We already are sentient. We actually know how that feels. We are conscious. And we already, on top of those other miraculous things, have it in us to become wise, to ennoble consciousness. And of course, the Buddha started talking about these things a couple thousand years ago. Nevertheless, culturally, and I think most frantically in the last century or so, we have celebrated the relentless cultivation of loud, exterior, large, loud exterior accomplishment. And we separated out and kind of demoted the cultivation of inner life. In our most powerful places, we made inner life optional. if you get around to it, maybe when you're old and you've already made all your money. By the choices you have already made to be in this place and to let it nourish what you next become, I do believe that you are breakers of this cycle. Yeah. And it's not a moment too soon, because it is as though I look at us and it feels like our globalized economies and our dazzling technologies have so rapidly outstripped our ability to shape them to human purposes that they have landed us directly back with the problem of ourselves, the ancient problem of the human condition. When I started speaking of faith, which became on Being, in the early century, near the turn of the century, I like to say that. One of the things I heard, especially in newsrooms and in public radio and other respectable places, was that this subject is just too irrational and subjective. And I would say irrational and subjective, unlike politics and economics, which you cover all the time. And I have to say, today I rest my case. And I think also this is where I'm going to differ from those other speeches, because when I look at what is wrong with politics and economics, what I see at these things it is just that much more apparent that they are the thinnest of veneers over the human drama of fear and pain and loss and hope. In this place, you have sought and been entrusted as a matter of fact with the elemental, hard, and life-giving knowledge that you are suffering and so is everyone else. And that we have to work with that. We have to work directly with that. In our culture, in our cultural life at large, we're skilled at outrage, right? We do outrage out of our suffering and at suffering. We actually honor anger and hate as part of our life together. And honor, by that I mean we honor it in the sense that we take these things so seriously. We investigate them and shine a light on them. We study them. We respond and react to them. We do not know collectively, we are such beginners collectively, at how to stand with and honor pain and fear and suffering in and of themselves, to let them have their reality so that they may have a chance to soften. In fact, to greet them in their wholeness and as a potential source of compassion. You have been schooled in disciplines of sitting with, of letting everything arise, of allowing discomfort, of being curious about, gently mistrusting that exhilarating feeling when suffering hardens and momentarily feels like power. This world we inhabit urgently needs your presence. It needs what you know, manifest and embodied. People often ask me, I don't know why, this is a question everybody has, what's the favorite interview you ever did? And that is just the one question I could never answer. My mind goes blank. And I always say, and this is the true answer, the favorite interview I ever did is the last one I did. And most recently, I interviewed Angel Kyoto Williams, who I'm sure some of you know, yeah. Which, has changed me. And one of the things she says, which I continue to carry with me, is for those of us who are not monastics, the world is our field of practice. The world is our field of practice. The longer I live, and the more I do and see, I cannot understand, and I wanted to say also that this language infused my thinking about, what I wanted to tell you about what I've learned through this life I live, and also what I wish someone might have said to me at this stage of life, although I realize that's kind of a silly sentence because you're at every stage of life out there. But one of the things I want to say is that I cannot understate the importance of developing a spiritual muscle to attend to the intentionality, the intention that you bring to everything you do and say and create and participate in. And we are so action-oriented in this culture that this is the part we often speed up or skip over, even if we meditate. Always take great care with the how and the why of what you're doing as much as the what. Maybe take more care with the how and the why. In my work, where a conversation begins, shapes everything that follows. But a conversation begins before any words are spoken. It's in the invitation extended, the trustworthy atmosphere created, the care in a hospitable first question that invites the soft, searching aspect of another human being into the room. And that's not usually the aspect we invite others into our rooms in our public spaces. And that question that invites softness and searching gently lays groundwork for other more challenging questions that draw out dignity and honesty and revelation, and that make it reasonable to ask someone to bring that into a conversation with a stranger. I think I'm echoing Buddhist core principles when I speak about intention, right intention. In my early 20s, when I was coming back to spiritual inquiry, one of my great teachers across space and time was Thomas Merton, and also his writing about his conversations with Buddhist monastics. And I took at that time, and this has been with me, and it's just grown in how important it is to me. He said, he made a distinction between a good intention and a pure intention, and he said, of course, a good intention is a fine thing. But a pure intention is what you really want, and a pure intention is when you do whatever you're doing for the very best reason you can muster, and then you can also, with peace, relinquish your control over what happens next, over the outcomes. So, right now culturally, and I don't know if I should be talking about this, but here goes. I see us calling companies that are changing the way we learn and lead and love, calling them to a moral reckoning. And if I am attentive to how important intentions are, and I see that some of these enterprises started with an intention to move fast and break things, or even don't be evil without any inborn vision and rigor around what it means to be good, I don't think we should be surprised that the path to transformation is murky and uncertain. That's going to be hard. In our life together as citizens, we have been raised for a few generations, and we have certainly raised and trained you. We have raised ourselves to be advocates, to be articulators and defenders of our beliefs and our identities. And this is a noble pursuit, and there is certainly a place for it, but it is different from being a warrior in the sense that you've learned that language here. The humble warrior or the fierce bodhisattva, these are countercultural contradictions in terms. I see a subtle soul-stealing fixation in our culture towards the fights being fought, towards what we resist and must overcome. And again, while that can be noble work, it can also take us away from our driving, defining orientation towards the possibility of healing and compassion, which are our original abiding intentions. And even in that, taking the enemy as our teacher as part of that picture. So to you, I'd say, attend with your wonderfully flexed meditative muscles to what you are rewarding with the precious, sacred energy of your intentions and your orientation. The language of moral imagination I like. It's magnetic to me these days as I keep thinking about the long-term human, spiritual, civilizational work at hand. Moral imagination learns to discern the enduring shape of deep reality and potential against the news that is, as we say, breaking. It orients and constantly reorients towards what can be awakened and deepened. Again, all things you've been learning here. A second thing I wish someone had taught me at this stage in your life, and it may sound like a diversion from that, but I think it follows organically, and that if we can get our orientation straight and be clear about the ground on which we stand and where we want all this to go and to grow, we must allow ourselves joy and seek joy whenever and wherever we can find it. And I'm just going to say to you that I knew I was going to say this, and then I walked past all of you in the hallway coming in here with this exuberant joy ringing around me, and I thought, they don't need to hear this. Maybe there's someone in the room who needs to hear this. You're happy. At the beginning of my life, my adult life, was so earnest. I was overly earnest, and that over-earnest led the quality of my form of saving the world and actually my own well-being astray. I want you to insist on joy even as you are serving, even as you are perhaps more attuned to the suffering in the world than everybody else around you, even when you feel lost and uncertain, as you will, as we all do, again and again across the span of our lives, even those of us who look like we might have gotten our act together. I keep Pema Chodron's When Things Fall Apart with me wherever I go. Because things are always falling apart. I let her remind me every time I'm surprised that sense of the fixed solid ground beneath my feet was what was the illusion. And I'm so aware that right now in this country, we are fighting principally over an illusion that really got out of control in the 20th century, that we would defy the laws of physics and everything would only go up and nothing would ever come down. I think possibly, not that I can imagine what goes on in the mind of Pema Chodron, possibly she would say we are experiencing groundlessness, which was always the natural condition. It's a reality check. And by the way, an opening to change and to growth. But back to joy. In another room, not that long ago, a room full of very powerful people who have the means and the enterprises to make a lot of change, but maybe that kind of outcome-based change, that one of these powerful people stood up and said, how can we find joy in a moment like this? And I see a lot of good people right now nurturing anxiety and joy and distress in themselves and thus in others, because it seems the only reasonable way to be in a moment like this, that joy would be a luxury, perhaps a privilege, even an insult to those on the losing side of this moment's equations. But surely, amidst all of our greatest hope for the world, for our neighbors, and even those people who most dismay and frighten us, we want the world ultimately to recover its capacity for lightness and joy. Joy is not a luxury. It is not a privilege. It is a resilience-giving, life-giving birthright. And we can't call forth in the world something we don't believe in and embody. And again, that we believe in and embody, that it is as powerful as anger. And human flourishing, by the way, has never just been about reacting well to what's going right. I learned that from Mathieu Ricard. Our American pursuit of happiness, the way we've done this, may be something we have to outgrow, but I do see a capacity to know joy and gratitude in every moment, if not about everything, as a mark of the wisest people I've known and the places where human flourishing is manifest. The Buddha has that smile, right? The world knows His Holiness the Dalai Lama by his laugh. Jerry Colonna, who's on your board, was taking me through the Pamela Krasny Center yesterday, and here's what you said to me. You know, she's one of the most amazing women. She was always laughing. This is not a personality quirk. It's not an eccentricity that just happens to be connected to an enlightened existence. It is in the essence of enlightenment. Desmond Tutu, the Dalai Lama's friend, said to me, in no uncertain terms, that God has a sense of humor. And when Desmond Tutu tells you that, I mean, I don't know what it means, but I believe it's true. If I have learned anything in all my conversations across all these years, it is this another strange, deep truth of our species, that wisdom emerges precisely through moments when we have to hold seemingly opposing realities in a creative tension and interplay. Dismay and joy, power and tenderness, pain and hope, brokenness and beauty, mystery and conviction, calm and fierceness, mine and yours. My final word to you is to not let yourself lose the friendships you found here. Don't lose the teachers. To know the urgent importance of finding friendships and teachers wherever you go. For although it is life-giving and redemptive, this kind of groundlessness we inhabit, this kind of crossroads of reckoning, is not simple or easy to bear. And we are not meant to carry it alone. We surround ourselves with others who can hold mighty choices like love and joy and compassion with us and for us on the days and weeks, months when it might be simply too much to ask of us. I am so grateful to be standing here, looking out at all of you and knowing that you are my spiritual companions for this daunting and wondrous time ahead. I offer you my blessings and deep congratulations.